Hello, fellow risk takers, and welcome to my worst investment ever. Stories of loss to keep you winning. In our community, we know that to win in investing, you must take risks, but to win big, you've got to reduce it. This is Andrew Stotts of A Stotts Academy, where we help people facing four different challenges: investors who want to better manage their stock portfolio, aspiring professionals who want to learn how to value any company in the world, business leaders who want to make their companies financially world-class, and even beginners who just want to learn how to implement a simple lifetime investment plan. Join us for free at myworstinvestmentever.com/academy and get instant access to my short course called 6 Ways to Lose Your Money and 6 Strategies to Win. That this course comes from what I've learned from all of these podcast interviews. All right. And now on with the show. This is your worst podcast host, Andrew Stotts, and I'm here with featured guest, John Pastor. John, are you ready to rock?
I'm good, Andrew. Thanks for having me today.
Yes, and we've been just chatting a bit before this, and I know you're ready to bring it to the audience. But let me tell the audience about you a little bit. So sure. John Pastor has close to 2 decades of leadership experience in the business process outsourcing industry in the Philippines. And that's an industry that's, I just want to interject here. It's an industry that's massive in the Philippines, and there's some unique advantages in the Philippines. And I can tell you, I have benefited substantially from that industry. So for those listeners who are not benefiting from outsourcing in the Philippines, well, listen up, and you're going to learn from one of the pros in that area. So John has numerous years of experience in both the in-house and outsourced areas of industry, and has had the opportunity to work with top-tier multinational organizations since 2001. Aside from operations, he's also well-versed in different areas of business, such as continuous improvement, quality, sales and business development, workforce management, facility management, training, and human resource recruitment, as he's had these opportunities to oversee directly or indirectly respected department heads in those different areas. Now, John is passionate about people development, creating a positive culture and working environment, client and stakeholder relations, customer advocacy, and running day-to-day operations. That's quite a lot of stuff that you have done and are doing. John, take a minute to fill in further tidbits about your life.
Thank you for the very warm introduction, Andrew. Happy to be here. Yes, as you mentioned, I've had a very long journey in the business process outsourcing industry here in the Philippines. Yes, it's pretty big. We're running head to head with India in terms of how big it is for those 2 countries. Aside from that, well, it's close to 2 decades of exposure in the industry. I've managed all types of verticals, whether it's in the telecommunications field or the banking and finance field. Numerous locations, whether it's the US, the UK, or Australia. You name it, I've managed that. But right now, currently, I've shifted into the fintech payments industry. Currently, with a company called GHL, and I'm the chief operating officer here in the Philippines. Yeah. On a personal level, I happily married since 2005. We are blessed to have 1 daughter. Her name's Emma. She was born in 2009. Yeah.
Fantastic. And tell me a little bit more about the GHLs, and what's happening with that. That sounds like an interesting business.
It is. Yeah. The payments industry is starting to get, huge here in the Philippines. We do run a traditional business. If you're familiar, obviously you're familiar with, if you go to a store, you see those credit card terminals where you swipe your credit or debit card. That's our business. In a traditional sense, we supply that, we maintain that, we service that, we sell that. The good thing with GHL is we also have an online payments avenue. So it's not just a traditional business. We do have the online payment area as well.
Right.
So right now, because of the pandemic, it's very useful because people don't go out, they buy stuff online, and then they use our services.
So you guys got to be pretty busy, I'd imagine. I mean, It's a challenge for some businesses, whereas other businesses like, hospitality or something are kind of shut down. But I can imagine you've had a busy period.
Especially here in the Philippines, Andrew. Since March, since all this you know pandemic started, it's been crazy. I agree with you. It's been
Mm,
crazy, especially here in the Philippines because of the numerous cases that we have.
yep.
Um, from a work perspective, it has obviously impacted a lot of us here in the Philippines. Just to give you, a figure, the small and medium enterprise, situation here in the Philippines, close to about 4,000 SMEs have shut down their business.
Right.
From our end, obviously, if we look at our revenue forecasts versus the actual number, uh, it's been down since March,
Yep.
but we're surviving. We're,
Yeah.
we're we're trying to be more creative, to think out of the box and provide that unique service to
Mm.
our merchants here in the Philippines.
And I have a question for you.
Sure.
What's something interesting that, let's say, a Westerner may not know, or someone that just doesn't know the Philippines
Mm.
about managing people in the Philippines? Like, I think about Thailand. One of the things that I
Yeah.
didn't know when I came to Thailand is that Thais are not as motivated by money
Mm.
as Americans are. So if you
Right.
say, yeah, we're gonna have a sales contest, and it's gonna be for this cash or this, that, and then you find out that the response to that is just different from
Mm.
the way that, let's say, an American sales team may respond to that. I'm just curious, what, for those people that don't know much about the Philippines, what would be something
Right.
unique about the way to manage a Philippine workforce?
Wow, it's interesting. Very good question, Andrew. I've had colleagues from the US, from the UK, from Australia who were first timers in the Philippines, and they were tasked to manage teams here or groups here. Um, I could say that in a nutshell, it's very similar to Thailand. People here in the Philippines, the workforce, they're not as motivated, with regards to monetary rewards.
Mm,
It's more of they look for positive reinforcement. They look for that simple pat on the back. Hey, you did a good job. What's big here is when you have those big town hall events, and then you give do recognition to people. It doesn't have to have any monetary value. Just give them certificates or medals because, let's say, you're the employee of the month.
right.
That's huge here. That's
So
huge here, and it's
recognition for
yeah,
their hard work.
recognition, and that's something that those co-managers that I worked for before from the U.S., from the U.K., from Australia, they also learned that when they were here. So they actually had the same
Mm.
comments as you did a while back. So yeah,
Interesting. Yeah.
yeah,
Well, thanks for sharing that. I mean, that's the beauty of a podcast, is we get to learn about each other, and
of course, yeah.
that I love that part of it. Well, now it's time to share your worst investment ever. And since no one ever goes into their worst investment thinking it will be, tell us a bit about the circumstances leading up to it, and then tell us your story.
Sure. Yeah, I'll be happy to do that, Andrew. Thank you very much.
Yep.
As I mentioned earlier, I've had a very long and interesting journey, career-wise, in the business process outsourcing industry in the Philippines. I graduated way back in '94, and after I graduated from college, from university, first few years were dedicated into sales. So I was doing a lot of sales work, selling cars, selling real estate and all that. And then early 2000s, 2000, late 2000, early 2001, I discovered the business process outsourcing industry. So I joined, a multinational U.S. based company here in the Philippines. At that time, probably they were like the second company to put up an office here in the Philippines. So very good training, very good everything. I learned a lot from them, and I've stayed with that industry ever since. So I worked for several different organizations, multinational organizations, and I've been in the industry from 2001 till 2019. And probably there was this one year wherein I wanted to try my HR. I wanted to put on an HR hat because I graduated with a human resource degree, never practiced it. So when I had an opportunity to do that with a local bank here, I did that for a year on a consultancy basis for 1 year. But going back to the story, um, so I was in the industry from '01 to 2019, and if I look back in my career, there was a period of time wherein it was very dark in terms of what was happening career-wise for me.
Mm.
I remember the date exactly, December 15th, 2015. I was with a multinational company 2 weeks before Christmas, and I get this news that, hey, thank you for your service, but you know, uh, your work has been we're giving you redundancy papers.
Hmm.
So about seven of us were given our walking papers at the time, 2 weeks before Christmas, and the reason for that, Andrew, was in Australia. I'm not going to mention the company's name,
Yep.
but in Australia, the CEO stepped down, and the CFO took over the role. And the first directive to the Philippines was we need to reduce cost. You have to remove some people there. And about seven of us were given our walking papers 2 weeks before Christmas. Very painful at the time. And, obviously, wherever you are in the world, whether it's in the Philippines or somewhere else, you're not going to get anything. You can't look for work
Yep.
near Christmas
Yep.
or even January because people are still, in the
For the
celebrating
listeners
the
out there,
holidays.
Christmas is a big deal in the Philippines.
It starts
It starts in
September
June.
or June, yeah. Oh, funny. Yeah, that's very true. So it took me, Andrew. This is the real deal. It took me
Yep.
about you know October 2016. That's
Mm.
when I got my very first job offer. It was very difficult for me. Um, at the time, my wife was still working, but obviously we just started a family. A lot of bills were not
That
getting
had to been
paid.
terrifying.
Yes, and here in the Philippines, I guess I'm not sure if it's a Philippine thing or an Asian thing. Especially if you're male, you're the head of the family, and when you're unemployed, there's a certain stigma that's attached to it.
Yep.
Because we don't only take care of our immediate families, we also take care of the parents, the cousins, and all that. So
Mm.
it's you know how it is in the Philippines. So
Right.
it took a toll on me, mentally, physically, emotionally, and the first job offer I got, I took it. I took it.
Understandably.
No questions asked. I just took it. Um, and the funny thing is, after a few months, the same thing happened. The same thing happened.
Mm.
This time around, this company, based in Australia as well, decided to move all their business from the Philippines to India
Mm.
because, from a back office work perspective, it was a lot cheaper,
Right.
which is true at that
Yep.
time, right?
Yep.
So again, probably had like 5 months, or sorry, 7 months stay with
Wow.
them. Then it happened again. Uh, so it's strike two for me. And then
And how was that? How was it? How long did it last on the second time?
the second time only lasted for about probably a month and a half.
Mm.
I was able to land a new role again.
I'm just curious, by the way, about the
Yeah,
first one.
yeah.
Can you remember your darkest day
Oh,
during that time? Like what it was one day or one moment in time where you were at some place and you
mm.
you you just were at your darkest time?
The darkest time was probably in the fourth month of searching for a new role. I was talking to my wife. We were talking about, financial
Mm,
obligations and stuff, which, this conversation which turned to an argument, uh, and a lot of things were said, which you regret afterwards, right?
mhm.
But I guess that was the darkest period for me because I felt so incompetent.
Right.
I felt like, hey, am I, I've done my part. I've tried applying to different roles. I've gone through numerous
It's
interviews.
exhausting.
I went through like final interview stages, and then just some of them said, sorry, but we got someone else. But some of those other companies didn't say anything at all.
Yeah. Yeah.
Nothing, zero, zilch. So it's a very frustrating time, and you know, obviously my temper was very short at the
Mm,
time as well because you
yeah.
were so frustrated. Um, I would say that was the worst, day.
Mm, yep.
Yeah,
Yeah.
until wanted to change that when I woke up in the morning. I wanted to you have to remain positive. You have to do your best and all that. So uh, okay, so
So,
going. Yeah,
yep.
sorry,
Go ahead.
Andrew, go ahead.
I'm just thinking about how did it end? I mean, when can you say that you finally were able to get that job and all of a sudden feel like, okay, now I'm back on my feet?
Hmm. I guess on so after eight months of searching, when I got the job offer, I felt so relieved. Felt so when I got the job offer, I looked at my email and then immediately ran to my wife. Hey, finally, I got something. I got a job offer. It was a similar role to what I had before.
Mm,
Similar company. Headquarters were from the same country. So I was very excited.
mm.
I wanted to make sure that my wife was the first to know. So I told her the good news, and she was very happy for me.
Yeah.
And yeah, that's it.
Exciting.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exciting
And
at that time. Yes.
yeah. So what lessons did you learn from this experience?
uh, Take your time.
Hmm.
I know, based from what I described, I know like 8 months was a long wait. But in retrospect, if I look back, even though the I didn't have a job at that time, and I was unemployed, and I wasn't earning any money. I wasn't contributing to the family. My wife was still working at the time, and I didn't ask a lot of questions to open up conversations about the role, about your plans in the Philippines. Do you plan to stay long in the Philippines? I never asked those
Mm-hmm.
questions.
Right.
So I just wanted to grab the first opportunity that was there, because the first thought that came to my mind was, I need to have a job
Yep.
because I
Yep.
need to support my family. I need
Yep.
to support my wife, you know. So that's the biggest lesson for me,
Got it.
I
Um,
guess.
Maybe I'll share one story from my life about this, and that was when the 1997 Asian financial crisis happened, and I
Yeah.
lost my job, and we had a coffee factory. We still have to this day, but we were just starting it, and so it was so painful. My best friend and I had to live in the factory because we just couldn't run out of money, and it was
Wow.
such a tough time. And then to make matters worse, my sister passed away from cancer at that time. So I was, home with her in the US, and then came back to Thailand, and I was really depressed.
Yeah.
And I thought there's just no way I'm going to get a job. This crisis could go on for a long time, and I just didn't see a way out. And
Right.
I can remember waking up in that factory. Oh man, it just was depressing.
Right.
And nothing's happening because our customers were practically gone.
Right.
And there was a few things that got me out of it. One of the things was my best friend who runs the coffee business. He said, look, we've got to move to like an apartment nearby. We can't stay in the factory forever because it's just going to destroy our mentality. So one lesson that I learned is you have to change the circumstances a bit to get yourself to break break the cycle of the way you're feeling.
Right.
So that's one lesson I took away from that. And then the other one is that, and I think you can hear it, when you talk about this, is that for me, I can only speak for me, and I can only speak for men, or a man like me, is
Mhm.
that so much of my self-worth came from my job. So
Yeah.
when I lost that, and when I couldn't get one, I felt terrible about myself. And that's something that, I often tell my friends, my female friends, that, I tell them this story, and I say, look, if you really want to understand most men, they derive a huge amount of their self-worth from their work.
Definitely agree with you.
And if you don't understand that, and you expect them to not do that, you may be expecting something that's really hard for them to do. And
Mhm.
so I learned a lesson, and that is, I stopped the idea of, maybe I want to work for 5 years and then take some time off. Nope, not for me. I'm happy to be working all the time. And even when the
Right.
COVID situation came, I decided that I knew from this experience that I had to keep myself, busy.
Mhm.
And, I obviously, we all have businesses and other things that we're trying to keep going. But the main thing I did is I focused in on my online courses. I got a lot of interns that have helped me a tremendous amount. And I just focused in on, how am I going to, make sure that we're building our business through this crisis. So that's my big takeaway, is that a man's confidence comes maybe disproportionately from
Yeah.
his work. And that, anything you'd add to that?
Well, I definitely agree. Self worth goes down the drain if you're not employed,
Yep.
or if you lose your job that you've been passionate about your whole life, and then you suddenly lose it. It sets you back a lot,
Yep.
Andrew.
Yep.
Definitely agree with it. I guess one thing I forgot to add, aside from the argument I had with my wife, I had to stop paying for my parents' rent. That was very painful as well. And I had to ask help from my brother, who's in the U.S., to give more in terms of financial support. It was very embarrassing as well because
Yep.
I'm the eldest in the family, and the expectation was obviously for me to support my parents. They're pretty old now,
Mm,
and very painful
yep.
experience for me at the time.
So, um, I just want to highlight to the listeners out there, John is a successful man, and he's lived a successful life. And what he's going through is the willingness to kind of revisit the struggles that you've been through. And the benefit of this podcast for all the listeners out there is to take energy and power from John and from his
Mm.
experience, that you will make it through this. You will make it through the tough time that you're facing. So let me
Yes.
ask you, based upon what you learned from this story and what you continue to learn, what one action would you recommend our listeners take to avoid suffering the same fate, or to deal with it as it comes?
I would tell all the listeners, Andrew, if you're looking for work, take your time
Mhm.
and ask questions.
Yep.
During the interview process, ask as many questions as possible. Break down the barrier. Make sure that you're getting into something that you truly love, and the role that you're getting into is something that based on your core competencies would really align, so to speak, with the job role.
Mm.
Because I think that's very important, because if you're not happy with your role, then even if you go to work every day, it's just like dragging yourself to work.
Yep.
Yeah.
Who
But the
wants to
important
do
thing
that?
is, if yeah, that's true. If you're
Yeah.
unemployed and you're desperately wanting to work, don't just grab the first thing that's out there. I
Mm.
mean, look for something that you truly want to be a part of, whether it's a company or a role. I think
Yep.
if you can have those two combined, that's great.
Yeah, and I would add one other thing, which is the idea that, don't, a lot of times we blame ourselves,
Yes.
and it's necessary, and it's sometimes very right. But there are times in life where circumstances are a major factor. And when you're facing that situation, I think the one thing I would say is don't be too hard on yourself, you know, and this idea of takes time, you know, it just, this too shall pass is what we learn from the
Correct.
Bible.
Yeah.
So,
You have to remain positive,
all
because
right. Yeah.
when those negative ideas come into mind, then it's just gonna beat you up.
Yep. I mentioned a story that I had in my past where I was facing that depressing time, and I volunteered at kind of an orphanage or a place for abused or abandoned children. And you know what happened was I realized how grateful I needed to be for what I had. And so I remember that a very good friend many years ago, an older guy, said to me, "You can't think your way into better action, you have to act your way into better thinking." And it made me think that, you know, okay, what he's telling me is get out there and do something good for someone else, take the action, and that will reshape your thinking. But if you're sitting at home all alone trying to reshape your thinking and thinking that that's going to lead to better action, it's a tougher way to do it.
Correct.
So
Correct. Yeah.
all
Agree.
right,
Yeah.
all right, last question, what's your number one goal for the next 12 months?
On a professional level, probably stay in the payments industry. I know it's going to be huge here in the Philippines.
Mm.
You know, try to grow our company, try to grow the online payments platform as well, aside from the traditional business that we have. And on a personal level, just grow with make sure that the family is well taken care of.
Yep.
Be healthy. Hopefully this COVID situation is soon finished.
Yep.
Hopefully we can go back to normal come next year. So I have a 10-year-old daughter is turning 11. She has been stuck in the house for the longest time. She misses her friends. She wants to go out. She misses traveling. I miss traveling.
Yeah.
So that's one thing that we
Mm.
haven't done for the past few months.
Yep.
So hopefully things ease up in the coming 2021, and we can go visit some places.
Absolutely. And I look forward to seeing you in the Philippines. Well, listeners, there you have it. Another story of loss to keep you winning. Remember to go to myworstinvestmentever.com/academy to get access to the short course, 6 ways to lose your money and 6 strategies to win. As we conclude, John, I want to thank you for coming on the show. And on behalf of A Stotts Academy, I hereby award you alumni status for turning your worst investment ever into
Thank you,
your
Andrew.
best teaching moment. Do you have any parting words for the audience?
Oh, thank you very much, Andrew, for having me today, and thank you to your listeners for sparing some time to listen to me today. Parting words, yeah, just be positive. Keep a positive frame of mind. Things will get better. Thank you very much.
Fantastic. And I think I just want to remind the listeners that it is John's vulnerability and willingness to look at his past struggles that makes him a better manager. And I challenge all of us out there to follow his example and explore our struggles and be willing to talk about them and feel them. And that makes us a more compassionate person in life and in business. And that's a wrap on another great story to help us create, grow, and most importantly, protect our wealth, fellow risk takers. This is Andrew Stotts, your worst podcast host for the day, saying, I'll see you on the upside.